Hi, everyone. I have a little opening I'd like to read. My name is Amy Wolf. I'm the programming coordinator for the Osterville Village Library. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out on this beautiful Saturday. And to our friends on Zoom, thank you so much for joining us as well. Today, we are excited to welcome Wendy Northcross, the Executive Director of the John F. Kennedy Hyannis Museum. Previously, Wendy served as the Chief Executive Officer of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. Wendy completed a Ford Foundation Fellowship for Regional Sustainable Development through the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. Wendy was elected to the National Destinations Council of the U.S. Travel Association and serves the local boards of the Cape and Islands Workforce Investment Board and the Job Training and Employment Corp. She is a member of the Town of Barnstable's Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board. Previous community involvement includes past chair of the New England Chamber of Execs, JFK Hyannis Museum, Arts Foundation of Cape Cod, as well as numerous other civic organizations, and she has also been listed as one of the Cape's 12 most powerful women by Cape Cod Magazine. Without further ado, here's Wendy Northcross with Presidential Summers, the Kennedys on Cape Cod.
I won't. We may have technical difficulty, but I can do a soft shoe, so. So just to make it real brief, I've had a 33-year chamber career. I started out at the Hyannis Area Chamber of Commerce, and it was there that the JFK Museum was founded. So as I was announcing my retirement, which I thought in total, from the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, the museum board tapped me to come into the museum and run it on a day-to-day basis to get it out of COVID. We had pretty much closed the museum down due to COVID. So now I find myself not only a co-founder, but its current executive director. I have our board chair is here with us today, Paul Hart Miller. So hopefully I'll make it today. Anyway, so I'm really happy to that Amy asked us to talk about the museum, and I have a PowerPoint program that we have done at the museum, really to help explain the primary gallery and the new exhibit that was mounted a couple of years ago now. So the JFK Hyannis Museum is entering, I think it's 32nd year. We were created out of the massive curiosity that is ongoing about the Kennedy compound. People try to go to tour the compound, or they think they can tour the ambassador's house, and are sometimes startled to find out that Kennedys are still living there. So we have tried to redirect a lot of that curiosity and interest in the first family and the Kennedys entirely, directing them to downtown Hyannis in the building. It's the old town hall building, and it has a more appropriate storyline, because you can drive through Hyannisport, but you're not going to see the big sign that says here's the compound and enter here. This, it's just a lovely small little neighborhood, which factors into our story quite largely. So Presidential Summers is the name of the exhibit. It's primarily photography and video, and that's not by accident. President Kennedy was the most photographed person to ever become president at that time, and he mastered the art of television. He and his siblings had all been given movie cameras by their parents when they were little kids, and they were really used to being in front of a camera. So we have that rich catalog of photography and video, and that's primarily what you will see in this exhibit. We talk about how the Kennedys came to Hyannisport. And it was back, we actually have to explain to people that Hyannisport's not a municipality, it's not a city. We know it was an international date line, but it's just a nice neighborhood on Cape Cod in New England. And we tried to, is there a laser pointer on this? Is this the laser? Yeah. So if you were to follow this beach around over the corner, right behind this blue banner, you would find the cluster of homes that have become dubbed the Kennedy compound. This is the neighborhood. I think right up here was Sam Barber's studio, but we try to let people know that it's just a nice vernacular New England architecture. There's not big mansions, they're not big fences. There's nothing to really make it stand out as a compound. So, while it's a very lovely neighborhood and I would love to live there, it's not as grandiose as some people like to think that it is. Joe and Rose Kennedy, were born and raised in Boston, and Joe Kennedy, by the age of 38, was worth $2 million. And do you know how much $2 million is worth today?
A billion?
$1 billion? Don't you wish? 31 million. So that was quite a significant amount of money at the time. And he had been the youngest bank president at age 25. He was a financier. He was involved in investing in the movie industry. And he also, during the Depression, no, during Prohibition, he knew Prohibition would end. He went ahead and had agreements with the distributor of Hagen Haig and Dewar Scotch. The nanosecond the Prohibition ended, that liquor started flowing throughout the United States. He had sole rights to that. That's where some of that bootlegger reputation comes from. He actually didn't like to drink, but he knew how to make money. So anyway, he and Rose are having a large family, and like any large family with some means that lives in a city, what do? Yeah, get out of Dodge, right? So they went on the hunt for a summer vacation spot. They went to the south coast of New Hampshire, and they tried Cohasset, south of Boston. And Joe liked Cohasset. He liked it a lot. So he decided to join the golf club. So he applied, and they didn't act on his application. They just tabled it. Do you have any idea why? If 4 strikes against him, I heard Irish, yes. Catholic, yes. 2 more.
Didn't come from money.
Correct. He was self-made. He did not come from generational wealth. He was a Brahmin, but there was a 4th. Democrat.
Oh.
So he said to Rose, come on, we're gonna keep on looking. And he remembered his father had brought him, Ambassador Joe Kennedy's father had brought him to Cape Cod when he was a child. He said, let's try Cape Cod. At the time, this is the early 1920s, and we were a backwater. We were really not on a map anywhere. But he remembered that they rented the Malcolm Cottage in Hyannisport, and they rented it for a few summers before Rose said, yes, this is a nice spot. But I like to also ask people if you can identify members of the family, the growing Kennedy family. So we're gonna start with the oldest. Joe Jr., right?
That's true.
The real politician, right? Looking right at the camera,
Yeah, really.
smiling. How about the oldest sister?
Kathleen?
Rosemary. Yeah. You guys are really good. I have presented this to a lot of people, and they know the president, and beyond that, they get goofy. So Rosemary had a very difficult birth, a lack of oxygen at birth, and gave her special issues that she had, special challenges her entire life. She lived a long time, but she was kind of out of the family scene when she became a young adult. How about this sister? Kathleen, Kick, right. Kick was a few years younger than her brother Jack, and they were soulmates. Same personality, same joie de vivre. They loved life. They loved to be practical jokers. She married a man in Great Britain before the war, during the war, World War II. He was also killed in World War II, as was Joe Jr. Her next fiance was flying her to France to meet her dad, and she was killed in a plane crash. They were all killed in a plane crash. Jack was inconsolable. He had lost his best friend. And if you look at the family tree today, there's a lot of the subsequent generations have named their children for her. How about this one? Eunice. Used to call her Puny Uni. She was always skinny as a rail. She also had Addison's disease, as did her brother, Jack. She became her sister Rosemary's great champion. She took her under her wing, she cared for her, and it became a cause for her life. And she went on to form Special Olympics, and she convinced her brother, the president, to enact certain federal laws that would help people with other abilities. How about this?
Jean?
Nope. Pat. Or Pat, she gets really lost in the pack. But I have a fun story about her later, but Patricia Lawford, she married the actor Peter Lawford. She was very instrumental in her brother's presidential campaigns, actually in campaigns for Congress and Senate as well. She lived in California, but she was here a lot. How about this little guy? Robert, Bobby. Now look at the age difference there, right?
Yeah.
He ran his brother's campaign for president, the national campaign. Because we all know Bobby's story a little bit better. He became his brother's attorney general. He then ran for US Senate and then made his own run for the presidency and was assassinated in that attempt. The anniversary of that was 2 days ago, 56 years ago. He died in California. How about the baby?
Teddy?
Nope. Teddy's not born yet.
Whoa.
You said it before, Jean Kennedy Smith. She was the last surviving sibling. She became ambassador in the Clinton administration to Ireland. She's her husband, Stephen Smith, kind of ran the financial aspects of the Kennedy family fortune. Very accomplished woman in her own right. And then Teddy, who we probably know the best. And just checking my notes here. So this was the family. This was the growing family, eventually with 9 kids. Rose said, yes, this house will work. It originally was these 2 gables with the big porch and the lawn going out to Lewis Bay. But the ambassador added on a 3rd gable, made sure there were 9 bathrooms, 9 kids, 9 bathrooms. In the basement, he had, at this point, he was very involved with the distribution, not the production of, but the distribution of movies from Hollywood. So he always made sure there was a first run movie showing in the basement theater at the house. It's made the kids very popular in the neighborhood. And the bedrooms were all upstairs this house was very important to the kids. So they were all in very fine prep schools and boarding schools, but when they got out of school, this is where they would come home to. They considered this their home, even though there were other houses. And the ambassador had a house in Florida, but this was home. But when they came home, they didn't know which bedroom was their bedroom. They had to check the little chalkboard that was on the bedroom door to see if their name was on it, to find out which bedroom they were assigned for that particular visit. And they were usually bringing home friends. So that probably made it interesting for Rose to organize. She was a very organized woman. Those chalkboards are still on the walls. I mean, on the doors there. But this became, as I said, this became the heart and home for the family. The ambassador, after he left his service to FDR, technically retired, became the primary residence for Joe and Rose. He had loved Cape Cod because he was able to live near a yacht club. He really wanted the kids to learn how to sail because he never learned how to sail. He wanted to make sure that it had other assets. It was on a beach. He actually convinced the town of Barnstable. I don't usually tell people this, but because you're primarily local, he convinced the town of Barnstable not to finish the roadway in front of the house. It was supposed to continue on to the beach. He convinced them to stop it right at his property line. So he loved the beach. He loved the fact that it was close to a yacht club. He loved the fact that there was a golf club that would accept him. And he loved the fact that there was a Catholic church close by.
Which girls are which here?
So
Guys, I know.
you guys tell me. Eunice, right? Bobby, Patricia. Yeah, Patricia. Teddy, Rose, Jean, no, Kathleen's gone by now. Jean and Jack. This is right after the war, though. So this is the house that became the theater, the backdrop for Joe and Rose to raise their kids. And they're adults here, but they've been coming to Cape Cod since the early 1920s. This is where they were taught to be competitive. This is where their father literally had the saying, there's no place in this family for second place. You win, win, win at all costs. He also taught the kids that no matter what the rest of the world thinks of you, you always have your family. We always stick together. And that really carried them through life. Mom, Rose, was the one who ingrained in them, you have much, you have been given much, you have to give back. And that was from her very strong Catholic faith that was adopted from her mother. So after the war, we'll backtrack a little bit. Ambassador Joe Kennedy himself had wanted to be president. And he thought that politics were a way to level that playing field of discrimination that he had been facing because of his Catholicism, his Irish heritage, his new money. He thought, well, we can excel in politics and that'll be the leveling playing field. But he pretty much blew that with his isolationist position going into World War II. So he shifted gears and he focused on his son, Joe Jr. and just was grooming Joe Jr. for the presidency. And just think of the hubris there. I'm just like, my son's gonna be a president. After Joe Jr. died in a very dangerous bombing mission over the English Canal, the focus kind of shifted to Jack. But Jack said, okay, I will pick up the mantle of my fallen brother. I will pursue a political career. He hadn't been really sure what he wanted to do when he got out of the service. So he ran for office. He ran for Congress in his grandfather's district, Honeyfitz in Boston, and he won. He then, shortly thereafter, ran for US Senate, representing Massachusetts, and he won that and became the junior senator. He was kind of on his way. His father had been doing an awful lot of grooming, marketing, and I'll explain a little bit more of that in a minute, but he was really, he was being heavily supported by his family to do this. But his dad pulled him aside one day and he said, Jack, listen, you want to be president, you're 34 years old, you're kind of on your way, but this whole thing would go a lot better if you were married. He said, Dad, you're probably right. And we know that the president had a lot of girlfriends. And I'm just checking my notes here. He had a lot of girlfriends, but he really liked Jackie. He had met Jackie at a friend's dinner party that was sort of a blind date. Then he found out she was engaged to someone else. He forgot about her a little bit. And when his dad's virgin, he said, you need to find a wife. You need to get serious about this. So he decided Jackie would be the one. He called her up and proposed on the phone. No, he did. But in his defense, he met her in 1951 at a dinner party in Georgetown. She was 22 then, he was 34. So he called her up, proposed. She was in England covering the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. She was working for a newspaper in Washington, D.C., had been assigned to do that. So I give him a pass. I'm making the phone call. He met her, and I'm going to do a talk in July about the wedding, so I'll save a couple more details for that. But he met her at Boston Logan Airport, brought her home. It's June 1953, brought her home to Hyannisport for a weekend-long engagement party. Now, part of what we do at the museum is we talk about the family, but we talk about the things that happen here on Cape Cod. There's a very fine presidential museum in Boston, and you want to know anything about the president, you can definitely find it there. But we try to talk about some of the local stories and some of the fun things, right? So he's got his bride-to-be here for the weekend. The whole family's here. There are 2 days of celebrations. Finally, Rose Kennedy says, let's have a scavenger hunt. Keep everybody busy. So Rose Kennedy made the list of things to find. Patricia, Joe Gargan and Bobby. Joe Gargan was their cousin. Some of you may, did any of you know Joe Gargan? Yeah. Yeah. Well, Patricia, Joe, and Bobby were a team. They went out to find the list. Patricia went to downtown Hyannis. One of the things was the longest thing. One was a policeman's hat. They got the policeman's hat. They were on the search for the longest thing. Patricia went downtown Hyannis. She found a school bus with the keys still in it. She brought the school bus back to the compound, and they won the prize. There was an equally lovely and genteel engagement party in Newport, Rhode Island, where the wedding actually was. We have to explain that to people because that's not necessarily, it looks like Cape Cod. So a lot of people assumed that it happened here. It's like, no, that was in Newport, Rhode Island. The thing that's really amazing about both of these events is that he's a junior senator from Massachusetts. She's not Jackie O yet. She's unknown. The engagement was on the cover of Life magazine, national distribution. That's like going viral on TikTok. Right? Everybody's a junior senator, but that was the brilliance of the father. He knew how to market. He was socializing his son for a national run. When they got engaged, Jackie's mother said, "Oh yes, we're going to have this small family wedding in Newport." At St. Mary's, I think it was the church. They had 600 people at the church and about 1,000 people or more at the reception. It took them 2 hours to shake hands at the reception. The ambassador not only planned the wedding, he paid for it. So now it's 1960. For 7 years later, JFK decides that the time is right. The opponent is Richard Nixon. He's going to run. He enlists his brother Bobby to run the campaign. And they run a very, very smart, but very close race. Jack and Jackie were on the campaign trail. They flew into Boston and voted. And then they came here to the Cape to await the election returns. These pictures are an interesting story too, but this picture here is Robert, Ethel, Jack is sitting in a chair. They're glued to the TV. They're waiting the election returns at Bobby's house. Kerry Kennedy has told me that the sun porch of the house was a bank of telephones, and people were just calling in from across the country the results that they knew of the race. Jack was nervous, but Bobby was mad. Bobby had a little bit of a temper. So Bobby was mad that Nixon wouldn't concede. And Jack said, "Why would he? It's a close race." And he went to bed. He went upstairs to bed. Went to, I think, to his own house. Bobby stayed up all night. Finally, in the early morning, Jackie and Caroline's nanny, Maud Shaw, sent little Caroline in to wake her dad up. Her dad and she said, "Good morning, Mr. President." And that's how we found out the results of the election. Does anyone remember what the vote differential was? JFK won by less than 113,000 popular votes. Okay, you think about the 7 to 8 million that we're quibbling about today, it was extremely close. But Nixon did concede by telegram, didn't do it by telephone. The family then all were gathered. Jackie was very pregnant with John Jr. She was out walking the beach. They had to call her in. The family got changed. What I'm learning now is this particular photo that we have at the museum is one of the very few of all the siblings together at that time. Family picture taken in the house, and then they traveled by car. They drove themselves down to the Armory building in Hyannis, where the national press and their campaign workers had been waiting for days. And that's where President-elect Kennedy first met the world press, made his acceptance speech. It was very short, very sweet, and acknowledged that soon they would be adding a new member to the family. We've always seen the black and white pictures. We just realized Jackie's coat was purple. It was like, we had not seen that for a while. We've had a lot of Life magazines. So a very interesting thing happened when they, this is November, right? This is November 1960. Hyannis is jam-packed with people. We had been jam-packed with people all year during the election cycle. And moms took their kids out of school, brought them to Hyannis to get a look at the incoming president. You can see the ambassador and Rose, a very pregnant Jackie. Jack's walking into the Armory building. This was recently given to us by a nun, a woman who was somehow related to the state police that were guarding the president-elect. And when they walked in, very unusual thing happened. They got a standing ovation from the press and from their own campaign workers. Now, the media do not do that today. It was very rare that they would do that today, but they gave them the most enthusiastic cheer. Now, maybe they were just glad it was over and they could go home, take a shower and get a cup of chowder. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure people were extremely excited about the new era that was about to begin in our country. And that happened right here in Hyannis. There is a Kennedy Legacy Trail. It has 9 sites on it that are in the Hyannis area. It's a self-guided tour. We're about to enhance the information and upgrade the website that goes along with that. But this Armory building is on the tour. It's not, geez, what did I do? It's not open, but there's a mural that kind of replicates what happened in there. So that if you ever want to take that tour, you can do that. Now, the town fathers, the select board at the time, in the annual report for 1960 said, well, thank goodness that's over and we go back to the way life used to be. That didn't happen either. So we know from the presidential diaries that every June, July, and August, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during the presidency, JFK would fly home to Hyannis Port. He would take Air Force One from DC to what's now Joint Base Cape Cod, and then an Army helicopter would land on his father's front lawn. Now, to say that was a little disruptive is an understatement. The neighbors, everything would kind of stop in the neighborhood. People would get in a boat, come sit offshore, wait for the helicopter to come in. After a while, it's like, oh, it's almost 5 o'clock on Friday. I wonder who the president's bringing home this weekend. This is Pierre Salinger watching his boss golf. Probably recognize the golf course, Hyannis Port. JFK was a very good golfer. He just didn't want anybody to know it because he was very critical of how much time Eisenhower spent golfing. So I guess it's something you just do when you're president, complain about the last guy. What he really liked to do, though, this is kind of our signature photo. He would come home, run in the house, change his clothes, load up the kids on the Tunerville trolley golf cart, go tearing around the yard, go zipping down Marchant Ave, around the corner, over the penny candy store, load them up with candy, come tearing back. Now, today that would be considered child abuse. These kids are all related. No helmets, no seat belts. You see some of them hanging off the golf cart, but at least it's registered to be on the road. But this is what he loved to do. It was all about being with family. President Kennedy, even when he was a congressman or a senator, he did not like to give political speeches while he was on Cape Cod. This was his away place. This was his happy place. Because the thing that he really loved to do the most, aside from being with family, was to sail. So this is outside St. Francis Xavier. Just going to church was like amazing. We soon had the largest police department. Barnesville had the largest police department in southeastern New England because of the presidency. And the Secret Service guys used to tell people, oh, he's about to go out this door when he's really going out that door. So they were pretty good. This is one of the sites that's on the Kennedy Legacy Trail, the St. Francis Xavier. Some significant Kennedy events happened there. There's an altar that was built by the Kennedys to commemorate Joe Jr. He did a little bit of work when he was here. This is inside Jackie's house on the compound. And I show people, like, can you see through the window? This was a small, close little neighborhood. We're landing helicopters. We get the world crushing in on us. I love this picture because of who's in it, and what's in it. So here's JFK and one of his ubiquitous rocking chairs. One just sold in Texas at auction. Do you know how much it sold for? Just guess. $600,000. Or as Van, my husband says, it's amazing what people would rather have than money. But he had 14 of these. He had a very bad back, some kind of a degenerative spine issue on top of his Addison. So these chairs gave him great comfort. And we have one on loan at the museum and from the Waldorf Astoria, which you're welcome to come and see before we have to send it back. I love this too. Jackie was she was an avid antique shopper, and she would share lists of Cape Cod antique shops with friends. Like, oh, you have to check out this one, this one, and this one. I love the Nantucket basket. I'm guessing it's not a knockoff from Christmas tree shop. And these two gentlemen here are interpreters. They're Russian interpreters. His president is being interviewed by Khrushchev's son-in-law. This is what the president loved to do the most. He loved to sail. I don't have to tell you all about Crosby Wiana Seniors, but he was given one when he was age 15 by his father. The original boat is in Boston at the library, but it comes home to Osterville every winter for maintenance and care. That is not a sailboat race. That is a family picnic. You would never win anything with that many people in a boat. And it's probably just taking a little downtime here. This is on loan from the foundation in Boston, the JFK Library Foundation. I think you need at least another crew member or two. But the president was an extremely adept sailor. He and his brother Joe Jr. had won medals at Harvard, and they won a lot of races here. Does anyone remember how old Jackie was when she became first lady? Close. 32, 31. Close. 31. 31. First time she went to the White House, she was 11. And she thought it was shabby. Her words. I think that's what she was worried about when she was walking the beach. I gotta go live in that White House. So that shabby house. So she immediately cooked up a plan. She said, where are the presidential antiques? Where's the fine art? This is the people's house. It really needs to represent the best of America. She created the White House Historical Association. She convinced Mr. Dupont to lead it and to help find the presidential antiques. They raised the money through that association. They found the antiques. Some of them were hidden in the attic. She then hired a curator because it became a very fine, to this day, it's a very fine museum. She went to the president's advisors and said, okay, now we need a guidebook because we have people touring the White House need to know what they're looking at. And they said, no, that's a bad idea. And she persisted. She had a friend write the guidebook. She edited the guidebook, and it has been published continuously every year for 61 years. Very few books have that honor. It's not the same book every year, but it's quite an accomplishment. So we talk about Jackie, and we talk a little bit about this photography. We have some very large scale photos, larger than even those on the back. This was, we acquired these from a prior exhibit on Jacques Lowe, who was a photographer that Ambassador Joe Kennedy hired. Bobby said, I know a guy, I got a guy, when the ambassador said, we need a photographer to follow candidate JFK on the campaign trail and take pictures of him. So Jacques Lowe did. He had unequaled access. JFK wins. He's saying, I'm sticking around for that. I'm sticking around for the first year of the presidency. So again, unequaled access, amazingly photogenic people, new baby, first small kids in the White House in a long time. But then by the second year of the presidency, he said, well, I'm going to go continue my own career path. Devastated when the president was assassinated, as we all were, and realized his 40,000 negatives were priceless. So he tried to get them insured. No one would insure them. So he did the next best thing. He went and found a place to store them, a safe place, which was in a bank vault in the Trade Center in New York City. So on 9/11, all but 10 of the negatives were destroyed. Mr. Lowe had died earlier that year, so his daughters went on a worldwide search for any manifestation of their father's work. They got some really degraded things, marked up, chalked up, torn. They sent it all to digital artists at the Museum in Washington, DC, and they restored the quality. So we have not only the quality, but the scale, these large scale photos that are just stunningly beautiful. So it's an amazing thing to see in and of itself. We also have the book on how Jackie did the whole White House restoration. And this is the guidebook from a couple years ago on the 60th anniversary. Here's our town report. And in this town report, they talk about Cape Cod, going back to the way it was, but it never was the same again. And you all know probably more of that story than most of our visitors to the museum, but we grew in a very unplanned way, and President Kennedy knew the pressures of the fame that his family had brought to this place. So when he was a senator, he, just before he was elected, he filed legislation with Saltonstall to create the Cape Cod National Seashore. And as president, he signed it into law so that we forever have the great beach on the outer Cape preserved in the state that it was in the 1960s. In some cases is going back to a little bit more wildness. So I think as Cape Codders, we have that legacy to be grateful for the president, never mind some of his other political achievements. And that's pretty much how this ends. I then encourage people to go into the exhibit and see some of the more interesting photographs and video and to learn more. But I also have to usually explain to people that this is snow. Cape Cod space and it's snow. And they always want to know, where's the compound? It's right in that here. And that's my presentation, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions. But I do hope you come and visit the museum.
So how many houses did they end up buying?
That's great. There were 3, the ambassador's house. And then when the kids started to grow up and get married and have kids, they were still coming home to Joe and Rose's house. And Rose is like, go get your own house. She like kicked them out. So Bobby bought the house right next door. And then Ambassador Kennedy bought a house for Jack and Jackie behind them. So there were originally 3. There's now about 11 houses in the neighborhood that are owned by a Kennedy, Smith, Shriver.
Do any of the Kennedys live there all year round?
Ethel Kennedy is there year round now. She just turned 96. She's living in the house that she and Bobby have had. They're right in that very tight compound. RFK Jr. has a house. Patrick Kennedy, the youngest son of Senator Ted, has a house. Carrie Kennedy's around the corner. The Shrivers around the corner. Yeah. But it's not open to the public.
Right.
Unless you have a friend that's a Kennedy. Any other questions? Any other comments or stories? Yeah.
What year was the original house built?
That's a good question. I think it had been like in the late 19 teens. I don't know if I have that exact date. We bought the house in 1928, but they had rented it for like 4 seasons before that.
You had said that Joe wanted his kids, he wanted to belong to a yacht club so his kids could learn to sail. What yacht club did he belong to?
So there's a Hyannisport Yacht Club. It's a little tiny dock and a little building. The yacht club is more about the boats and the people, right? So there was the people that were there to help. They actually had a pier themselves, but got destroyed in the storm and have never got put back.
So not the Hyannis Yacht Club. but the-
No, Hyannisport, right? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Jennifer Williams at the Historic Society could tell us exactly what.
Over the years, have any of the Kennedys come to the museum?
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. Rosemary would come. She was not able to ever speak. She spoke with flashcards. Her father had her given a lobotomy, thinking it would help her physical challenges, made it worse. She would come. Senator Ted Kennedy was a great champion. When we wanted to involve Bob McAllister, who's in the room, was a former boss. And he was on the board of directors of the Highness Chamber when we decided we needed to try to direct all this energy into a place that instead of the Highness Court, we spent a year getting permission from the family to do the museum. Jackie was still alive then. And Jackie's, Ted thought it was a great idea. Other members of the family thought it was a great idea. Jackie was not too crazy about the idea because she thought, when is enough enough? There had been a huge outpouring of recognition for the slain president around the globe. And this was 30 years later. And she just said, all right, but if you're going to do it, please put it in a building that existed when the president was alive. So we had been looking at space, and that had actually been offered space over in 132 or by the community college, but we just returned our focus to downtown Hyannis. It was at the exact same time that the town hall was moving out of the town hall building into an older building for the town hall. So we just kind of elbowed in, got a little quarter of that space, and now 32 years later, we have the whole building, which is a blessing and a curse. Kathy,
You want to tell the story about the statue in front of it? please?
no. There was yeah, because I don't have the clear memory. There's a statue, a very fine statue by David Lewis in front of the museum. And he wanted to do that for the town. And his original concept was after John Jr. had died, which was 25 years ago this year. So his statue concept was father and son walking arm in arm, but his son is a grown man. And that just kind of didn't sit well with a lot of people, so it became rather controversial. And we ended up with just the president walking with his khakis rolled up, walking through the beach grass. Kathy lived that.
I had his chamber when all that was.
Yeah.
Did Jackie continue to come after her husband's killed?
She did. She continued for a couple of years. She wanted her children to be close to her cousins. But then she eventually, there's a lot of cousins and they're all kind of rambunctious. And she ended up building a house on Martha's Vineyard and spending more time there. But John Jr. Caroline and John Jr. always had their parents' house in the compound, and John Jr. and his new wife were renovating it at the time of their death. So their intention had been to keep that house. Now Ted Kennedy Jr. has that house. History. I've always said to people, this is a great example of being rich and famous. If you can be rich, don't be famous, because your life changes pretty dramatically. And it's in a way you probably, and I think that's why, Jackie was the first lady was like, really, do we have to have a museum here? And she understood, well, we're trying to redirect attention and teach people the real history, so.
The ambassador's house was left to Ted Kennedy, and then he donated it to an institute of some sort.
So when Ted died, there was a foundation created called the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the US Senate. And the house is owned by them. And the desire was that it would become a place for retreats and conversation and debate and people learning about the Senate and how US government works. Rose wanted it, she had it in her will that when Ted died, all the furniture had to go, sort of like the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, all the furniture had to go back and nothing could be changed, and she wanted it to be open to the public. But the institute that owns it is still trying to figure out the highest and best use for it, and it's in a small, tiny little neighborhood, and to make it open for the public presents a lot of challenges, so we don't see that happening necessarily anytime soon, but we got a meeting on Tuesday, Paul and I, to talk to them about how other ways that people could see and access what that house was like, because it is an amazing museum in and of itself.
So Ted's family
In
doesn't
other
get to
words,
use it.
I understand having buses brought in would be challenging, but if people could have a different mode of getting there, it would be very interesting for the public to see where he actually lives.
Yeah, there's a way to control it and to have small groups. I think as long as Ethel Kennedy is alive, there's a lot of concerned about security and privacy. Because those houses are right there, right? Yeah.
And helicopter tours.
Helicopter tours, that's a great idea. Well, really, we tell people the best way to see the compound is from the water, so take a Highness Harbor tour and go see it from the water, and you get their version of history. We have a collection from their interior decorator, the gentleman that was hired by all the Kennedy women to do their houses. So we have all of his letters, his notes, his swatches. So we're looking at trying to create an exhibit with that. And we're also looking to see how we can do a virtual reality tour of the house. Yeah. And then Taylor Swift owned a house there for 25 minutes. If we could get that house, I'm sure that would be equally popular. So I hope you all come by the museum. Please come by. We are open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5 all year round. In the summer, in the winter, we don't open 6 days a week. We've got our author series starts on Monday. Max Stearns is a PhD instructor at the University of Maryland, talking about parliamentary America, how we might form parliamentary style form of government. He'll be debated with Dr. Michael Krasanik retired from Bridgewater State University. We have the following week, and then Friday, Kate Story, who wrote White House by the Sea. She wrote a book all about the houses and the family on Cape Cod. And then we have, who else do we have coming? Well, check the website, JFK Highness Museum. Our events are free. We're expecting Dr. Brinkley to come back this summer. He wrote a book that was about the American moonshot. And so he's coming back to talk about that and President Kennedy's role in that. And he's a very fine presidential historian that we're excited to have back. So lots of events.